This meeting is being recorded.
Hi guys, we are group 2 and our issue is, does commercial fishing have a future? We are going to start with the introduction to our topics. So I'm Maddie and I said that commercial fishing does have a future because of all the new technology, equipment, and all the new information coming about how to prevent overpopulating the fisheries. I do believe that there is a way out for this.
Hi, my name is Allison Perrine, and I believe that commercial fishing is more detrimental than beneficial to the environment, and I believe that commercial fishing does not have a future.
Hi, I'm Julia Corso, and I'm on the side of yes, commercial fishing does have a future because of how it impacts our global food supply, the financial impact, and the source of protein it provides the human population.
My name is John, and I'm on the no side, and I believe commercial fishing does not have a future because of, one, the morality of killing the animals, the mass extermination and the depopulation, and the overfishing.
Hi, I'm Abigail and I'm on the no side. I don't think commercial fisheries have a future because of the methods of capturing the fish ends up killing a lot of them, and that fish farming can just be more beneficial for everyone.
Perfect. So now we will move on to the position clarification. Julia, do you want to start?
Okay, so we'll start. On the yes side, I think that, as I mentioned in the introduction, that there's a few reasons why that commercial fishing is beneficial and there's a future for it because of the global food supply it provides. Fish are a significant source of protein for the whole population. From Iceland to Malaysia, people eat more fish than red meat. In countries with access to fresh seafood, it largely contributes to their daily intake and feeds the world's demand for seafood. So without these commercial fishers, a lot of these people in these countries wouldn't have their source of protein, because seafood is a fantastic source of protein, especially as an alternative to red meat. And in the face of climate change, scientists are researching better ways to reduce meat consumption, and seafood is a great recommendation. And thanks to the precedence of overfishing companies, such demands can be met, and it helps these people eat a lot healthier, because obviously seafood and fish are healthier than a lot of other red meats. And with people becoming more health conscious nowadays, the demand can be met. And obviously there's the financial impact of commercial fishing. As of 2016, commercial fishing added up to be $61 billion to the US GDP. The seafood industry has been booming and giving these people jobs in these countries that have access to fresh water and these fishing areas, and it's essential in rural regions around the United States, and it impacts these communities heavily. And historically, these sectors of land have relied on overfishing, commercial fishing for decades. And worldwide, the demand for seafood is exponentially high, and it's even higher in areas for the Pacific, where citizens derive between 25 and 69% of their protein from animals, and those animals being fish.
To kind of go against that, I believe with fishing becoming such a detrimental effect on the environment, with commercial fishing not having a future, it was reported that the amount of inland water species has decreased by 28% between 1970 and 2003. As the trend for inland fishing increased, there has to be some sort of structural change in order to protect the aquatic ecosystems and species within. With the expected increase in population comes the increase for food, and then comes many negative impacts caused by unsustainable fishing methods. If more food is needed, fishermen will seek out different ways to accomplish as much intake as possible. This could mean the use of explosives and poison, which is incredibly detrimental to the aquatic ecosystems and the environment. And a common method of fishing is called bottom trawling, where heavy, large nets are dragged along the ocean floor. This destroys sea habits as well as marine life and anything that is like along the bottom of the ocean, typically being sea turtles, where this breaks their shells and causes a lot of harm to them. Many times, nets and fishing gear are discarded into the ocean after use, and this pollutes the ocean and causes a lot of harm to ocean life as well. Anything that is discarded into the ocean could pose a potential threat to marine life, water, and sediment quality, which eventually leads to a decline in the amount of species within the ocean, which then allows for less fish to be able to catch. Even if fisheries are structured with more regulations on how much they can catch, they would still be harming the fish, eventually leading to a larger decrease in the amount of fish in the ocean. Over time, this is just going to exponentially decrease the amount of species.
I really liked what you said, Allison. Can you clarify like what animals, is there a specific like animal group that's affected by fisheries and like fishers in the ocean, or is it like just other fish species?
So it's not just the fish that they're looking to catch, it's other animals within the ocean as well, because sometimes plastic is discarded into the ocean, which could harm sea turtles, other types of fish, other types of animals in the ocean. So overall, it's harming a lot more than just the fish.
Okay.
I
Okay.
agree with Allison. And to add on to that, so there's a big issue with long line fishing, which is an indiscriminate fishing practice used with long line fishing rods. And it actually kills hundreds and thousands of sea turtles, dolphins, birds, sharks, and other untargeted fish. So they're not particularly getting the fish that they want to get, but in the process, they're damaging and killing all these other species as well.
Mm.
Julia, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Can you clarify how commercial fishing affects marine life? I'm so sorry. I'm about the human population.
Yeah, so how commercial fishing affects the human population is like how so the people that live on like these coastal areas, this is like their life and it's what they eat, it's their jobs, it's how they work. So they work and then they catch the fish for the whole kind of like town, village area, and then they eat that fish. So without them like on those like Pacific areas, this is like a huge part of their life, but for the human population as a whole, it's a huge protein source that's healthier and better for the environment than red meat is. And I have a question for you. Could you like get like really specific about how it affects the marine life's like future, like longevity of like commercial fishing?
Yeah, so with all of these different methods of fishing, a lot of them do tend to be unsustainable and they do cause a lot of harm. So, with them already taking fish from the ocean, with all of these different methods, it also starts to decrease the amount of marine life in the ocean. So, like over time, this is only going to increase and it's just going to make it less and less as time goes on.
Perfect. Abigail, do you want to talk about your positioning and what you think?
Hey, sorry. I think that fish farming could replace commercial fishing because it's easier to produce like uniform fish all year round. Like there's not so much variation in size or taste. So it's just like you can have it all year. You can have a supply all year, even if it's like there are different climates that don't usually support that. And I think that it will lower pricing on fish, and fishermen will see their income decline and they'll probably not want to do fishing and go into something else because fish farming will be taking over. And I think it's more efficient to fish farm because the fish in the like set up farms are protected much more from dying because there's no predators like there is in like the wild.
I have a quick question. What do you think would be like the best way to tell fishermen who love commercial fishing like that fish farming is the way to go?
What would be the best way to tell them?
Or like convince them if they're like so used to doing what they've been doing for years?
I think they'll still be involved in fish
Mhm.
and like how they still have like all this like expertise in fishing. It's just a different kind, I guess, instead of like going out and doing it in rivers. I guess they'll need different experience, but they still can do what they love. It's just in a different way and it's better for the environment.
Got it. Has there been any like, have you read anything about how like a certain like that someone who's been doing commercial fishing, how they've transferred into fish farming and how they've enjoyed it? Or is it all like a new process that's still like being learned about?
I think people are still probably trying to get used to it, but it's just becoming more and more popular. But I guess like if people like fishermen have been like doing this, like they've been passed down from generations, like they do fishing, then
Mhm.
maybe they'd be more discouraged from it because it's like the only thing they know, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
I did want to add on. So another major key point that I had was the mass extermination and depopulation. So 90% of large fish populations have been exterminated because of the enormous numbers of animals caught. A big reason why I think commercial fishing doesn't have a future is because at one point you're gonna fish so much, and at now 90% have been exterminated. At one point, all of the fish are gonna be depleted and you're not gonna have enough fish. So also in the textbook, it says in 2004, the US Commission on Ocean Policy issued a report. And in this report, they called for improved management systems to handling the population and the declining fish population, issues with coral reefs, and promising new industries such as aquaculture. So I feel like even if there's not policies put in place to prevent the overfishing and the depopulation, it will eventually come to an end. So like either way, something has to change for it to continue having a future.
I agree.
I was about to say I agree, but like how would you like say that the people like in these like Pacific countries where fishing is like their livelihood and their main source of like protein, like what do you think that they should do instead? Like I know Abigail touched on fish farming, but like what do you think they could do instead?
I think it depends the person and they have to like assess their diet needs. But I feel like one major thing is just it needs to be controlled. So yes, you can have it as part of your diet, but it's not gonna be found as much. Like there just can't be as much fish on the market as there is now for it to be continued. As far as other substitutions for fish, I mean, I'm not really sure. I know there are tons of substitutions for that and things that can make up for it, but no, I don't have anything off the top of my head that can substitute it.
To me, I think that the environmental impacts kind of outweigh the need for the fish because in terms of like environmental like negative impacts on the environment, it seems like it's a lot of damage to the ocean and the ocean life, which then causes a lot of problems for us as humans. So, in my opinion, I find that with these negative effects, they do outweigh the positive effects in having the fish to eat.
That's a really good point, because I feel like everything in this like situation or in this question is kind of like a circular effect. It's like, well, if humans aren't catching the fish, then they are eating the fish. So they're eating fish instead of red meat to help carbon emissions. It's like, where does the line get like drawn? Like, do we stop commercial fishing or do we start eating more red meat? And I think that's a good discussion for our free form discussion next.
I was also going to say, like, in one of the articles I was reading, it was saying how, like, the controversial topic of, since the fishing industry is such a large expense to the world and it also takes in a lot of money, do you guys think changing the way we like not produce but like get fish, that it'll go up or down in the industry, like how much it's worth in the world? Did that make sense? Sorry.
Yeah, I feel like there's like a lot of fish that are like overfished and like that are super cheap. I can't think of, like, maybe I'd say probably something like tuna, that's like really like inexpensive, but like other fishes that are more rare or there's a lot of regulation around them. Like I'd say like some lobsters are like really expensive because of how they're fished. So yeah, if there's regulations put on it, it will definitely, I think, dramatically change like the price and like how it affects the economy. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm just curious. Okay. I think we are good with questions. Should we move on to the actual debate, everyone? Okay. So to start off, does someone on the no side want to start off with like a no question or a disagreement?
Well, I was wondering if you find that the environmental impacts outweigh the positives.
I would say, I think yes, it definitely does, especially reading about it. I think it's like really bad what it's done to the environment, and I didn't realize it until reading about it. But also, reading like some articles and like all the new technologies about it to prevent like a worsening situation, it will help it become more sustainable. And one of the articles I read, it was saying how they've tested a safer form of fishing and to also cut down, and it's called like you would share the land and like basically plot out times when certain fisheries can fish in certain areas so that there isn't an overpopulation, or if it, like isn't over like decrease in fish right away. It would be like over a gradual period of time instead of like ban like 1,000 fish or just gone. So I feel like in the future, like there will be a more sustainable way to fish, which will prevent even more like awful, harmful environmental issues.
How long do you think it would take for them to instill more sustainable practices?
When I was reading, it was saying it should be 5 years, like to reach like the best potential time and for everyone to like gather this new, like, because it's something like you can't just do, like, and no one really knows about it yet. So it's also like, how do we tell like fisheries these all new regulations, all new rules without them wanting to like sue everyone, you know?
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard because there are like different types of fishermen. There's like the fishermen who do it for their own enjoyment, and then there's the ones that do it for a living. So it definitely would be really hard to kind of convince the ones that do it for a living. And then the ones that are doing it for their enjoyment, sometimes it is for profit. So I am interested in how that would be done going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I also read something. It was saying that like fisheries need to adopt an array of, they call it smart tools, which helps each specific environment. It helps, these rules will help them adapt to it and how to like take advantage of the resources instead of wasting their own resources. And it was saying one of the ideas would be like a tradable catch share, which fishing managers would allot fishers to specific shares of the total catch and give them the flexibility to account to reach their shares. So they would basically be able to own a percentage of what they catch instead of like everyone's fighting to get a certain amount of fish. It would help make it more peaceful and less like consuming of everything, basically.
I have a question about that actually. Do you think if they did something like that, it's kind of like honor system, like they'll give them shares and they'll give them like zones of where they can fish and when, and like do you think people would like do you think fishermen would like abide by those rules? Like would it last, or would people just try to like sneak in and like do it behind everyone's back anyway?
I know, I was thinking about that. Like I'm on like reading about it. It's very interesting because it's so new and like only a few like areas have done it and tested it out. But I think that once more research is done about it and people see that like it's not bad what they're doing, like it will end up helping out not only the environment, but like everyone's time. I feel like time won't be wasted, it'll be way more efficient. And once people realize that, more people will adapt to these new regulations. They won't be so upset about it. But I also think it will take like definitely like a person to be like the front man and be like, let's just do this and like we'll figure out and like see if it works.
I think the main concern is for those people who don't want to comply with the regulations and they are going to continue to go and still fish and use these unsustainable methods. I think that might be a really difficult part to this just because not everybody is going to agree and not everyone's going to want to comply with these new regulations.
That's always like something like to take into account, is like how like not everyone's gonna like do it. So for the future of it, do we think like that's the best like situation for these like commercial fishers to do it like Maddie was talking about? Or is there like any like I keep thinking about like alternatives, but it's like there's a demand for fish, and how is that demand for fish going to be met without overfishing or like hurting our marine system? And I think that's a question I have for the no side.
I think that fish farming is like supposed to help with that. Like it's not supposed to take away like all of the issues, but I think it will just help like environmentally, and it will just, I think it might just be like a little bit of a better alternative. I don't think it's going to be any like situation is going to be perfect, but I think it might be better than having commercial fishing with some regulations, because like as Madeline said, like not everyone might want to follow it. So it might just not end up working out.
I was gonna add something because I feel like the main goal, because even though like I'm on the yes side and Julia's on the yes side, and like a lot of people are on the yes side because fishing has been a part of society for like decades now. But I feel like the main goal is to just improve the situation in the environment that fishing takes place and not shut it down. But I also understand how like the no side, it's hard to like wrap your head around how do you take such a big industry and like make it sustainable. It's sort of like the fashion industry, like how do you make everyone believe that sustainable fashion is worth it and like worth going all these risks in order to make it a successful like sustainable industry. And one of the articles I was reading on the National Geographic website was talking about how in the Philippines, they've actually have traditionally done sustainable fishing and it has worked out, and they're able to harvest and still maintain the fish populations. And so like reading something about this and how it's just like their normal way of life, I feel like it gives us hope that, yeah, it sounds like a lot, but it's able to be done. And instead of using like spear fishing and like long laying and all of that, they've actually done like made hooks that are constructed out of sustainable items and resources that save time and money to make. And they're also able to use different kinds of nets that are sustainable, which I thought was cool to not like harm the fish, but also like help out the environment. So I feel like, what do you guys think? Do you guys think like seeing a country like performing or transforming their industry? Do you think it will inspire other countries to do so or no?
I totally agree. I think that will definitely help the future of commercial fishing. I think the term's gonna evolve for as long as it exists because it supports like 1.7 million jobs nationally. So, and that's I think just in America. So yeah, I think that that is definitely a great idea just to kind of like keep it going, but change the way it's being done and change the future of it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I thought it was pretty interesting to read about that. And then also like on the consumer end, I feel like when you're buying fish, you don't think about like where it comes from and like how it's bought. But I feel like informing the consumer on it could also lead to increasing the sustainability of the practice.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you brought all of that up, and it definitely brings upon a new perspective on this that I hadn't thought of before. I think that if another country can do it, it is always possible, but it just, the effects still are long lasting, and I do believe that some of them won't go away. Like for example, like the way methods of fishing, if it is such a high demand and you have to catch so much, then how are you able to do that sustainably?
I feel like that's like the question that we're all trying to answer is how can we do that sustainably? And I think that's up to the future of the fishermen, the government regulations, because everything has to be in accordance with each other. So hopefully, maybe advocating for the no side, if like there could be like people that advocate towards like the government of these big commercial fishing companies, maybe there can be a change, and then commercial fishing doesn't necessarily have to have such a bad connotation associated with its effect on the environment and marine life.
To add on to that, I was also reading how it was like they practiced this example on fishing boats in Massachusetts, which is like one of the top US ports. And it was basically suggesting that they like did a test run and they put sensors in the areas and which developed like a data bank, and it gave fishermen data on the ocean temperature, the sanitary levels, and also the oxygen levels. And this was used to help them like target specific audiences and species that they want to go for instead of catching all these random fish and then like depleting the population, even though they didn't want those fish. So I feel like doing that was really smart. And if more areas did that, it could also create a more sustainable like way of catching.
That's really good to know. And I think that there are so many different possibilities. And moving forward, there's definitely a lot of ways that can be improved. I still think that in terms of just like proving that it can happen, I think that would be very important before kind of like looking away from fixing this. Like if you're able to come up with like a test and see exactly how it will work out, I think that would definitely be much more relieving for the people who believe that commercial fishing is bad, just so that there is some sort of reasoning behind everything and how we can really like reinstate the ways of how everything is going to be sustainable. I think it's just really important to test before doing, because another part is that with the restructuring the laws against around fishing, I think that it's also really hard because you have to make sure that it's going to work before investing all of this money into it. So what I'm getting at is that it would be good to kind of find out how it's going to work and what's going to work before putting all the money into it.
I agree with that. And I also I feel like all of us, even though we're debating against each other, I feel like it's very easy to understand like why this wouldn't be a good idea to have it available in the future and like to shut it down. But I also think it's still important to like see a future in it. So what do you guys like, what's your final thoughts on the question and like the whole scenario?
My final thoughts is definitely that yes, there is a future for commercial fishing, but hopefully just to like kind of reinvent that term and to make sure that it's more sustainable in the future, because it does give so many jobs. It does help like the human protein like intake, and it definitely drives jobs, the economy. It helps all these people, and it's how they eat. And also reduces like red meat, like carbon emissions associated with that. So yeah, there is a future. I just hope that we can make it better and not destruct our marine life.
I think that it would be very, very difficult to control the whole entire fishing industry. Since there are so many different types of fishermen, like I said earlier, I think it would be almost impossible to regulate everybody who's fishing. So I believe that commercial fishing doesn't have a future, and just because of how big it is and how hard it would be to control all aspects of it.
I agree with Allison. I think commercial fishing doesn't have a future at the scale that it's at. And I think that there needs to be major changes. And we need to find alternatives that work and are successful in lowering the scale, but still helping provide the food that humans need.
I agree with them. I also don't see a future for it unless there's like a really major change, because I just also don't think that the government would be able to like keep tabs on everybody that's fishing. So I think we just have to come up with alternatives, and maybe we don't need to take it away completely, but it will be like on a way smaller scale than it is now.
I agreed with Julia how I think there is a future for commercial fishing. I think reading about it and like discussing like all the new techniques, technology, and all of the like test trials they've done on different parts to see how much more sustainable we can make it. I think there's a hope for it, and I think it'll be exciting to see how far we can take this without it getting shut down.
Awesome. I totally agree with that.
Okay, and that concludes our debate.